My whole life is messed up, and there's nothing I can do about it. It was a hot and sunny Sunday morning. After listening to the weather forecast that morning, I knew the sun was only going to get hotter. But I didn't want to take any chances, so I decided to finish my chores from the previous day. As I worked, cleaning the house and rearranging my stuff, I found something that brought back some old memories. It was a picture of my ex-wife, Beck, and me. We took that picture on her birthday a year before our bitter divorce. She had suggested, well, more like forced me, to go to a 5-star restaurant to celebrate. I had initially suggested to celebrate at home with our family and friends, but she refused, saying it was too low for a woman of her status. I agreed reluctantly because I didn't want to ruin the little tranquility I was enjoying at the time. Seeing myself wearing a fake smile on my wife's birthday made me sigh. I dropped the picture and went to pick up my phone, trying to forget the memories from those times. I dialed Marge's number, but she didn't pick up on the first and second dial, so I hung up. Marge is my girlfriend. Well, one of them at least. That might sound weird, but hear me out. I met Marge at a coffee shop a few weeks after Ella. My first girlfriend and I got together after my divorce. She was in a heated argument with someone over the phone, and since she was disturbing everyone's peace in the shop and no one was willing to caution her, I stepped up to the task. I told her to either quiet down or take it outside, and I could see the surprise written on her face as she apologized profusely to me and everyone else in the shop. I won't lie. I found her attractive from the moment she stepped into the coffee shop and had been thinking of a way to approach her. We talked for a while after her call, and I was able to get her contact. And ever since we would go out for drinks and hang out. But one night we got intoxicated by the alcohol and got intimate. Surprisingly, she didn't take it negatively the next day, giving me the green light that she might be interested. Since then, she would frequently visit my place, and we would get intimate and do other things, but I was careful not to put a tag on what was happening between us. Although she would try to make conversations about things like that, I would tell her that I was with someone else and wasn't interested in any form of commitment. I mean, she never took it well, but I couldn't care less as long. One night, while Ella and I were hanging out at my place, Marge sent me a long romantic text, and because I had to use the bathroom, Ella opened my phone and saw the text. She got very upset and demanded an explanation, and I had no choice but to open up to her about everything because she had become a very important part of my life, and I didn't want to lose her. Ella was a very good and kind-hearted person. We had met at a social event and became friends afterward. When she heard about my divorce, she helped me get through it and stood by me after as well. It was only natural that I would get attached to her. And when I opened up about my feelings for her, she was thrilled. All this while, it had looked like she had similar feelings for me. And when I confessed, things aligned perfectly, and I didn't regret it. She was always helping me out one way or the other. She did things even my ex-wife wouldn't do for me, and this made me appreciate her even more. Anyways, back to the present, I was trying to get a hold of Marge. I continued dialing her number, but she wouldn't pick up. I sent her a text message telling her to come over to my place in the evening. I finished cleaning the house and went to take a bath. A few minutes after I got into the bathroom, I heard a knock on the door, and before I could even answer, I heard the door open, so I guessed it was Marge. Only she and Ella had spare keys to my apartment, and Ella already told me she would visit her mom that day. But to my surprise, when I came out, I saw Ella standing there, not Marge. My mind ran into a frenzy, but I played it cool and acted along.
"I thought you said you would be going to your mom's today,"
I asked, as we snuggled beside each other on the couch.
Yeah, I thought so too until she called me to cancel our plans because something urgent came up, so I decided to come spend the day with you.
She replied, and we kissed. We watched different movies till it became evening, and she told me she wanted to spend the night so she could go to work early the next day. I didn't object, even though I knew Marge would be here any minute.
"I'll sort it out when she comes,"
I thought to myself. But about 3 minutes later, we heard a knock on the door, and this time, I was very sure it was her. Ella stood up to get the door while I sat back, relaxed. She opened the door, and as Marge stepped in, I could see her thoughts written on her face. She tried to hide her surprise, but she couldn't. They were shocked to see each other like that, and even more surprised to see how relaxed I was about the whole thing. I mean, there was nothing I could do. So, simultaneously, they both asked,
"Who's she, Will?"
As I looked into their eyes, I felt bad for them, especially Ella, because I could tell she was torn apart and betrayed, and Marge, who stood there, fuming like an exhaust pipe, could explode any moment. As I stood up to say something and clear the awkward atmosphere, Marge suddenly ran out of the door, slamming it behind Ella's face. After she left, I let my eyes rest on Ella, who still had the same expression earlier. I pulled her into an apologetic hug, and I felt tears dropping on my chest. But as I tried to say something to her, I felt my phone buzz with a message. It was a text from Marge, and it read,
Will, I love you, and I know you feel the same way about me, so let's move in together.
I was surprised when I saw it. I've never told her I loved her and we weren't even a thing, so why would she suggest something like that? Later that night, after Ella and I made up, I replied to Marge's text, saying it would be impossible for us to move in together because our relationship was only a fling. I didn't want to get committed to anybody. She replied with another text that read,
You're a coward, Will. I regret ever meeting you. Stay away from me. And don't even try texting or looking for me.
Well, I couldn't care less, so I did exactly as she said and stayed away from her. But after 2 weeks, something weird happened that made me want to find her. Ella called me one evening, clearly frightened, and told me that she received a text from a stranger on her way back home from work, and that the text identified that it was from Marge, my supposed ex-girlfriend. She said that the text showed that she was stalking her because she mentioned everything she was wearing and doing at the time. I was surprised, although I knew Marge to be someone with a fiery temper. I didn't know she would resort to something like this just to be with me. I pacified Ella and assured her that nothing bad would happen. We got over it until I received a text from Marge, and it read,
Hey there, lover boy. You might think you've gotten rid of me, but I assure you, I've got my eyes on you and I will shock you soon.
I was surprised that Marge would still keep up with something like this. I was still certain she wouldn't be able to do anything dangerous, so I let it slide. All of a sudden, the texts and emails became rampant, and now she was texting both Ella and I. Ella got scared every time she received the texts and emails because it felt like Marge was everywhere in our lives, watching us. She would spend days at my place because she was afraid that Marge would try to attack her when she was alone. I understood her fears because I would feel the same way in her shoes. 6 months later, the texts and emails kept coming in, and I was beginning to get concerned about our safety, especially Ella's, because she was too fragile to defend herself against Marge if anything were to happen. When Marge wouldn't quit stalking us about a year later, I told Ella to start spending more time at my place, and this helped us bond well even better than before. I decided to visit Marge's family to ask about her, but they said they couldn't find her either. The last time they had seen her was about a week after our messy breakup. It was then that I learned she was bipolar, and we all guessed she stopped taking her meds, which was why she was acting strange. I also learned from her mother that during her absence, she missed her sister's wedding, her father's funeral, and her son's graduation, which according to her was very unlike her daughter.
Family-oriented indeed. She didn't even tell me she had a child.
I thought to myself. Marge's mom also told me she had gotten a text from Marge apologizing for her absence at the family events. But now that she thinks about it, she is sure the texts weren't from her because they didn't look like hers, and she knows her daughter would never leave her family like that. I remained unconvinced because, from the texts Ella and I got, I was sure she was nearby, only waiting for a perfect moment to strike. Despite my visit to her family, Marge didn't stop stalking us. Ella's fear increased by the day, and although I tried to take her mind off it, it was evident that she still lived in the unspeakable fear. She would flinch at the slightest strange movement, and I felt bad for putting her in a situation like that by getting with Marge. 3 years later, the texts and emails didn't stop coming, and although I became relaxed, Ella was far from being relaxed. Her fears were finally confirmed one morning. I was just getting out of bed when I got a call from Ella. As I picked up, I heard her screaming and crying hysterically. I was surprised. Ella was usually a calm and collected person. I probed her, trying to grasp what was happening, but she wouldn't stop crying. Still confused, I tried to calm her down, and when it worked, I asked her what had happened.
She burnt down my house, Will. She burnt down my house and killed my pets.
She replied, unable to control her tears. I was gobsmacked. Never in my life did I imagine that Marge would do something that heinous. She could have killed Ella. Immediately, I rushed to Ella's apartment and I was horrified. The whole place was a mess. There were some rough inscriptions on the wall that read,
Whore, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Wait until I show you the stuff I'm made of.
The police and fire department were also there trying to gather any evidence, but there was nothing. They questioned Ella, and when they asked who she suspected to have done this, she mentioned Marge, and told them about the threatening texts and emails we'd been getting from her. They were surprised that after 3 years we never made a report. After the questioning process, they informed us that they would get back to us after their investigation. Ella moved in with me for good this time, and I tried my best to help her get over the trauma. A few weeks later, normalcy began to settle on us, and we thought things were finally over. Meanwhile, 2 detectives and a forensic pathologist got involved and noticed things weren't adding up. 3 years of stalking and a missing woman, something's fishy. So they hatched a plan. One of them would pretend that Marge was alive, and the other like Marge is dead. But the thing is, no one could prove that she was indeed alive. A month after the fire, Ella went to the station for reasons best known to her. I learned this when one of the detectives in charge of the case called me and told me that she had visited them with a new theory and that they were beginning to suspect her. According to him, she said it was Beck, my ex-wife, who burnt down her house and that the gun in my car was missing. I didn't see how this was related to her being the suspect because I was certain she was innocent. Then he told me they had collected her phone to investigate the texts and emails she said she was getting, and asked if there was any way I could help. It was then that I remembered that Ella had dropped an iPad at my place before leaving for work. Then they asked to bring it to the station for further investigation. I didn't take this information seriously until 2 weeks later, when Ella placed a distressing call to me. This time, whoever it was able to get to her. She was crying and groaning in pain. She had been shot on her leg. I was horrified. Why would anyone do something that crazy for whatever? This was a sheer case of psychopathy, and I wasn't going to let anyone treat my woman like that. I drove with so much panic in my chest to the scene of the crime. The police and ambulance were already there trying to make sense of what had happened. According to what I heard Ella say, Beck had ambushed her on her way back from work, kidnapped her, and brought her to the lake only to shoot her and run away. As the ambulance drove away to the hospital, one of the detectives and a forensic scientist came to me and told me they didn't believe Ella's story because it just wasn't adding up. I was enraged and I asked them if they wouldn't believe someone whose house was razed with fire and just got shot. They told me they found some odd things in her phone. Apparently Ella had 30 fake email accounts and several pictures of Marge's car. Nothing about this sounded odd to me, because whatever reason she had 30 fake email accounts for was her business, not mine. And Marge's car wasn't made for just her, so it could have been that she was looking to get a new car, as she had always wanted. I handed the iPad to them at the scene and told them I had to be at the hospital for my woman. They refused and asked me to follow them to the station to see whatever evidence they would find on the iPad. I reluctantly agreed because I wanted to clear Ella's name. To me, a good person should not be treated like this. When we got to the station and checked the phone, we found an SD card, but all the memories had been formatted. After several trials, they were able to retrieve the memories, and what we saw shocked me to my core. It was a picture of Marge's dead body. I was shocked. No, I was in disbelief. I was hysterical, and maybe even a little crazy because I couldn't believe my eyes. It couldn't be. It just couldn't have been Ella, and something in me urged me to have faith in her. I told the police officers that a picture wasn't enough evidence to accuse an innocent woman of murder, and that we needed concrete proof to believe their allegations. That same day, the policeman told me to accompany them to inspect Ella's car, and as I trailed behind them in my car, different thoughts occupied my mind.
What if she did it? What if she was innocent? Where is Marge? Where is Beck? What's going on?
As I thought of all this, I noticed we had gotten to my house where Ella's car was parked. The police officers rushed out of their car to check her car, and I did the same. They opened the door and snooped around for a good 10 minutes, but when they raised one of the seats, there it was, blood. Deep, dark, and red. I became even more confused. My eyes felt heavy as I thought about the possibility of the whole thing. What if my woman was a murderer?
It was a dark, windy night. My jaws tightened in anger as I stared at my laptop. I was grateful that the weather was in sync with my mood. The more I stared at the image on my screen, the angrier I got. I knew why you were attracted to her. She had what would easily pass for a model's face. She had bright blonde hair, her large eyes were as brown as a berry, and her mouth curved up in a beautiful smile. It was captivating, but I didn't care. No matter how beautiful, nobody would take my man away from me. I cropped her picture and searched for it on the internet. After endless searching, I finally came across her account, Marge Lane. I stared at her picture before proceeding to check it out. From what I could see from her posts and pictures, she looked like a normal person. There were several pictures of her with her family and a young boy I guessed to be her son. I wondered why she went out with you when she had a child. I clenched my fist tight in anger as I looked at her face. I had to get her away from my man as soon as possible. I can't let anyone take you away from me, especially after all I've done. After finding out about the relationship between you two some nights before, when she sent you a romantic text, I was too in love with you to get angry, and when you apologized, I had to pretend I had forgotten it. I checked your phone while you were asleep and saw that you had scheduled a meeting with her that Sunday, so I planned to meet her in person. This was why I called you that night to tell you I would be going to my mother's place. But I wasn't. I thought you would protest the idea, but you didn't. Angered me even more. I was hurt to know that you would betray me like this. Still, I wasn't going to mess up my chances with you, so I decided to remove the other woman from the picture without raising suspicion or getting my hands dirty, and the first step in accomplishing that was meeting her. So, I waited patiently for Sunday to come. That Sunday, I waited for a while before leaving for your house. That was my plan, to show up at your house unannounced, so I would get to meet the other woman. When I got there, I knew you were in the bathroom because I heard water splashing, so I quickly unlocked your phone and copied her number to mine. And when you came out, I dropped the phone and let out a fake smile. I knew you were surprised, and that was exactly what I wanted. As we sat and watched a movie, and you asked me why I wasn't at my mom's place, and I thought to give the flimsiest excuse that came to mind. I waited patiently for her to come, but it seemed like she would be coming late, so I had to say I would spend the night with you. It was obvious that you weren't happy, but my plan had to go on. That evening, I finally saw her, Marge, my rival. As I opened the door, I could see the surprise evident on her face, but I already knew who she was, so I faked a sad expression. When she left angrily, I immediately put my acting skills to use. I began shedding fake tears to guilt trip you, and it worked. But deep down, I couldn't help but laugh. After I left your place the next day, thoughts of how to get rid of that woman without getting my hands stained with blood ran through my mind. The thoughts consumed me, making it hard for me to focus on my daily activities. After so much thinking and searching, I finally got a bright idea. I laughed and jumped as I drew a mental picture of what to do without getting involved at all. I knew someone who would do it. Beck, your ex-wife. Beck loved you so much, but she just didn't know how to treat you right. She would give you anything and everything you asked. But as we both know, she was too controlling, selfish, and extremely insecure, and even cheated on you once. I don't know why she thought you used her for her money, when all she had was a nasty attitude. Well, I didn't care. I only needed her to get rid of Marge. I checked her profile on Facebook and saw she belonged to a farming club, and they held weekly meetings in the town hall close to where I stayed. Their next meeting was the next day, and I made plans to attend. When I got to the town hall, she was indeed there. Looking like a shadow of her former self, I could see that the divorce had taken a great toll on her, but I didn't care. It wasn't my fault that she didn't know how to treat her man. I went to her under the guise of looking to join the group, and when the meeting started, I sat beside her. It took a while for the boring meeting to end, and I couldn't wait to move on with my plan. After the meeting ended, I moved closer to her with a fake smile. She smiled back at me, and I said,
"Hi, Mrs. Edward."
Her face lit up as I called her by your surname as though I didn't know you were divorced. When I saw the effect that had on her, I knew it would be easy for me to get to her.
"I'm Ella, a friend of your husband. I came here because there's something really important I think you should know,"
I said.
"I'm afraid Will and I are no longer married. We've been divorced for over a year now," she said with a sad expression.
"I know. I'm sorry too. And I have something to confess. Will and I were actually going out for a while,"
I said, feigning remorse. She looked at me with some slight change on her face, but I didn't stop there.
"I'm no longer interested in the relationship, though, because he has another woman now, and he's pushed me to the curb, but I think you deserve him even more than I do," I continued.
"You do?"
"Of course I do. You gave him everything you had. Your life, your savings, your money, your body, and all he could do was treat you like trash. I found out about your divorce recently, and I honestly feel bad for you. He didn't tell me he was divorced earlier, and I couldn't stand him cheating on me even after divorcing you like that. I think you should try to get him back, though. He's still not over you, and if I were you, I wouldn't let anyone take him away from me.
Are you sure I should do that?
She asked, a bit skeptical.
Of course you should. I left him so you can have him back. After all you've been through together, I can see you still love him. So what is there to doubt? But I understand if you don't want him back. I just think it's unfair for another woman to take your man just like that.
I continued, hoping she would pick the clue, but stayed mute.
Will loves you too. I know it from the way he stares at your pictures. He's just confused about his feelings, and I think you're the only one that can clear up that confusion.
She looked at me with eyes gleaming with hope and asked,
What do you suggest I do? I miss Will.
Well, I wasn't interested in getting myself stained with any dirt, so I said,
You should think about it very well. I don't know if there's anything I can do to help, but you can have my number, so when you're ready, you can contact me.
She stared at me as I quietly slipped away. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I heard her voice, I knew my plan worked. There it was. She just caught the bait. I did a happy dance in my mind because my plans were moving smoothly. I just had to do little and Marge would be out of my life in a few days.
Hi, Ella, it's Beck, Will's ex-wife.
I heard her say over the phone.
Oh, I guess you've made up your mind, so what are you planning to do?
I asked, hoping she would say what I wished to hear, and she did.
Well, I know it's way too deep, but I was thinking of getting rid of her.
Get rid of her? Like kill her?
Well, yes, can you help me with that?
What? Why would you ask that? I didn't mean for you to do something that extreme. I'm honestly disappointed you'd come up with something like this, Beck.
I know it's bad, but I'm desperate and I need your help. Please help me out in any way you can.
I don't know if I can do it, Beck. It's too deep for me.
I promise I won't say anything about it. Nobody will ever learn of your involvement. Just help me out, please.
Hearing her beg like that brought a proud smile to my face.
Fine, but this means you'll never go back on your promise.
I said, and she agreed. I sent her Marge's phone number and instructed her to send Marge some threatening texts. When Marge got the texts, she got scared and left town, which was exactly when we striked. I paid someone to trail her and monitor her whereabouts, and once I got her exact location, I took Beck in my car and we went to where she was. Marge was staying at a motel a few hours away, so it was easier for us to carry out our plans. I talked Beck into stalking and kidnapping her, which we did easily. She had a triumphant smile on her face as she brought unconscious Marge to my car at a secret location I picked. When we were done tying her up, I brought out a sledgehammer and told her to smash it into Marge's face.
What do you mean, smash it in her face? That's cruel.
She asked, blood draining from her face.
Well, if you have another option, which I don't think you do, then you can go ahead with it, but with what I see here, you have very little chance of getting back with Will.
After the first hit, I saw that Beck was becoming scared and might want to chicken out, so I said a few words of encouragement to her. After the 10th hit, Marge's face was destroyed and she was dead. I took a picture of her corpse in case I had to blackmail Beck into keeping quiet. Beck and I drove back home after I promised to set her up with you, which I didn't. I created fake email accounts and began to send different messages to myself, and you made it seem like it was Marge. I even sent an apology text to Marge's mom after seeing the pictures of her father's funeral on the internet. I blocked Beck's number and continued going out with you. This time our bond was even tighter. 3 years later, I felt like you weren't taking the messages seriously again, so I did something drastic to keep you on your feet. I set my house on fire and killed my pets in the process, but of course I didn't care. This yielded the exact result I wanted. Then something crazy happened. I don't know how Beck found out I was going out with you, but she tried to blackmail me, and I was able to guilt trip her the first few times. I spent 40 hours a week for 3 years sending false texts to myself and you, and Beck thought she could fool me by telling me to come to the lakeside because she wanted to apologize for trying to betray our secret. I wasn't dumb, darling. I knew what she was up to and went prepared. I took the same sledgehammer we used in killing Margie and used it to kill her too when she tried to attack me. After dumping her body in the lakey, I shot myself in the leg to avoid suspicion, but it just made everything worse. I didn't know the police would eventually find her body even after 5 days. but they did. I'm sorry.
If you like this video, like and subscribe to this channel. We're just starting out, and we need your support to continue creating great stories like this. We'll be uploading 3 videos per week, so make sure to turn on your notification bell to be notified each time we drop a new video. A big kiss, and see you in our next video.